I then met the father to my kids and started a little bit more of the traditional settled down and raising kids, not working as much. So my savings went down a little bit. And then I got a divorce. And I have to tell you, since I got divorced, I've made the highest salary I've ever made. So this idea that divorce is financial ruin, my ex-husband and I really careful about how we did our divorce. We used mediation that was offered by our local court. We tried to keep it as low conflict for the kids as possible, which actually meant low cost as well. So that was really lucky. My biggest financial mistake was when COVID happened. Even though I had stuck to my plan all the way through from 1998 when I really started investing to 2020, I really did think this was going to be different. And I could not see how our economy could continue when everyone was at home. And I took out about $200,000 and took it out of the stock market, still within my retirement account, but just put it in a money market, whatever my settlement account was. And I lost about $50,000 in that 1 month, sold really low, and then it bounced right back in that month around, March, April. I still regret that. I guess it's not as big a financial error as I could have made, but that was a really, really big lesson to me to stay the course no matter how stark things look.
What kind of actions did you take after the case study?
So after the case study, I put in my notice.
Yay.
April 8th, I knew that I had enough to bridge the gap with the income that I had coming in from my other position. I met with 1 hour of fees for service financial advisor through Nectarine. I was given that. Thank you very much. An hour with Nectarine that was donated for the person who participated in the case study. And he was fabulous. He knew exactly what I needed to do. We got on Vanguard together. We chose from my brokerage account the funds that would have the least amount of capital gain, literally choosing them lot by lot. And I transferred that money over so I had that ready to go. And that's the money that I've been using as needed when I've needed to over the last almost 2 months.
Welcome to Catching Up to Fi, a podcast on mindset, money, and life for late starters of any age on their journey to financial independence. I'm Bill, and I'm a late starter.
I'm Jackie, and I'm also a late starter, and we're your host. We're here to help you on your journey to financial independence, no matter where you're starting.
We're going to talk to experts, other late starters, and explore topics related to our mission.
Join us as we catch up to Fi together.
Hey, Jackie, guess what? It's Plutus Awards season, but our audience won't know what the Plutus Awards are. What are they?
Yay, woohoo! We are excited that we are in the running for several different categories for the Plutus Awards. And the Plutus Awards basically is given important recognition to independent content creators in the financial space. It's been around for 10 plus years at least, right? I can't exactly remember how long, but anytime I saw that a content creator won a Plutus Award, that was a big deal. And it demonstrated that they were great in what they were doing in terms of the financial space as an independent creator.
Yeah, I mean, this would mean the world to us if you would consider going on to the website plutus.awardsplatform.com. That's plutus.awardsplatform, one word, .com. We're up for about 7 categories, Jackie, and one we're really proud of is the best new personal finance content creator audio. Now, we started 2 years ago. We've had over 1 million downloads, but we're still allowed, because of a miss last year, to be up for this new content creator award. It would mean the world to us if you would consider voting in this category.
Yeah. And like you said, even though it's been 2 years, we're still considered new. We've got podcasts that's been out there for 10 plus years, and they've gotten really good at it. So we're proud to be still considered being in the best new personal finance content. Now, also, we've got several other categories, and one of those is Content Creator of the Year audio. So this is another great one that we believe we're deserving of it. And if you think that we deserve that and you want to do a little give back, we would love it if you would nominate us for that category as well.
Yeah, and there's People Choice Awards as well, and we're up for the one for audio.
Yeah, and then we've got the Plutus Storyteller Award. Bill, we have some great storytelling on this show that are from the voice of late starters. And then you and I have shared our own story as well as Becky. So the Storyteller Award definitely spoke to me. So I wanted to make sure, I was so glad to have us on the list for that as well.
Yeah, I mean, your stories are a pivotal part of the show. We late starters are here together to learn from each other, and your stories are critical to get out there to the financial independence community. Another category that we're up for is Best Traditional Retirement Content. We do give hardcore information. It isn't all softcore. We are also hardcore.
Yeah, not only that, Bill, but a lot of us that are getting a late start maybe a little bit older, where we are planning for traditional retirement. We all want to reach financial independence, but when it comes to the retirement piece, perhaps we are in those traditional retirement ages. So we talk about things like Social Security. We've had something about Medicare. We've had a lot of CFPs and other financial professionals that are talking about even the traditional part of it. So this was a great category to be a part of as well. Another one is one that's close to my heart, is Best Personal Finance Content for Women. Our audience is 70+% women, and we have a lot of shows dedicated to that. We just recently had Carrie Carbonaro. I did a Women in Taxes webinar that I cross-pollinated to our platform, but speaking to women is a big part of our show and what we like to bring in.
Yeah, and lastly in these categories, we're up for Best Personal Finance Content for Underserved Communities. We feel that the late starters are an underserved community. We are probably the only voice in the podcast world out there speaking to you, the catching up to fires, the late starters. This is a new thing for us, and we hope that you feel that you're being served.
Yeah, and if you think that, please support us in this way. We don't ask for much, and we certainly appreciate you tuning in every single Sunday and occasionally on Wednesdays. And if you think it's worthy of other people finding the show, please take the time to do it. I think there's a quick little registration, but you can get through it in 5 minutes. So if we could have 5 minutes of your time to do that, we would be so grateful. And Bill, I also have the book Fire for Dummies and a little bit of my own platform. So I'm in the running as well for a few things, not competing with Catching Up to Fi, but one of my favorite. So if you want to support me as well, I'm under the Best New Personal Finance Content Creator written for Fire for Dummies. So I'm pretty happy about that.
Yeah, also the Best New Personal Finance Book. And we all think that's the case. Fire for Dummies for life.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And I've shared a lot of the content from the book on the show, of course, but also I'm in the running for Best Financial Advisor Content. I am a CFP professional, so I got into that category. And then there's something called the Plutus Resilience Award. And I'm not sure if this is a new category or not, but this definitely spoke to me. I've openly shared my story to, get it out there, and hopefully it impacts other people or inspires other people by sharing my mistakes and things like that and how I bounce back. So resilience is a very important term for me, term of endearment, really. And then the last one, Bill, is Best Financial Independence Retire Early Content for Fire for Dummies. I literally wrote the book on financial independence and retire early. So that's the last one that I'm in. So for both Catching Up to Fi and my book, we would love for you to take a minute and vote for these. Again, it's at plutus.awardsplatform.com. It has a quick little registration. You can be done in 5 minutes.
Yeah, you'll see this link in our newsletter. You'll see it in our show notes. And we just hope you feel as we do that we put out some stuff that is worth listening to. Hello, and welcome back to Catching Up to Fi. I'm Bill Yount with my lovely co-host, Jackie Cummings Koski, and we have a late starter Fi story today. We're very excited about this. This is her first time podcast. We love podcast versions. So reach out to us. Let us know if you want to tell your story, and we would love to have you on to inspire others to join us on the late starter Fi journey. Before we get started, we're going to have Lisa tell us about her charity. And because we like to promote charities a lot, and we'll introduce her in just a minute. Jackie will introduce her, but there's a charity that's near and dear to her heart. So Take it away.
Great. I'm so honored to be here today. My charity is called Adelante Latina, and it's adelantelatina.org. Pretty easy. It's here in my hometown of Baltimore. This organization takes Latina high school students starting in grade 9 and works with them every year to mentor them, make sure their grades are as high as they can be, helps them with college applications. And all of these young women are first generation and helps them get into college. Their statistic on the young women who complete their program is that 95% enroll in a college program, and the national average is 36%. So they're really making a huge difference. It's a small group of really dedicated volunteers, and I think they could really benefit from some additional support. So I reached out to them, asked if it would be okay if I chose them as my charity, and they're excited to receive any donations that folks want to make.
Yeah, we'll put a link in the show notes so that you guys, as part of your giving plan, can help our guests out with things that they're personally involved in and are near and dear to their hearts. Okay, Jackie, let's find out a little bit about Lisa and get this thing rolling.
Well, first, I absolutely love that charity. I was a first generation college student as well, and I know what a difference you're probably making in their lives. So, as we mentioned, we've got a wonderful late starter story. Her name is Lisa B., and she is 53 years old, and she's a single mom of 3 teenage kids. She lives in Baltimore, so let's just say that Lisa B. B is for Baltimore. So, she has been a nurse since 1998, and she just used some FU money to leave her clinical job to transition to a teaching position. To her, this FU means freedom unlimited. She loves to travel, learn languages, and take long urban walks. So Lisa was chosen for this year's economy case study. So I had the benefit of working with her. We did the case study together, and I just fell in love. She's amazing. She's smart. So she was brave enough to share the details of her financial life with over 200 strangers and give us a peek into her world. I'm still in awe of her doing that, but I think it went really, really well. So in return, she received crowdsourced feedback, also tips, recommendations, all of that to help her reach her goals, including a possible mini retirement. So just a few weeks after the case study, Lisa did something big. She quit her job. I was so excited when she sent me that email. So I'm like, yay, Lisa. So besides her numbers, she has an incredible late starter story where she bounced back from adversities. She found her strengths and she reached FI without even realizing it. So Lisa's story was one that also made the J.L. Collins book, Pathfinder. She's on page 247, and her story is titled, Aiming for FI Before My Youngest Hits 18. So Lisa, welcome to Catching Up to FI.
Thank you. So happy to be here today.
Yeah, so let's get into your story a little bit. That starts sort of in the younger ages. So tell us a little bit about how you grew up around money. What kind of lessons did you learn?
Well, a single mom raised 3 of us. I have an older and a younger brother. And it was a challenge for her, but we never really felt it. We had what we needed. She made sure we had great education, stable home. But as I grew up and got closer to college years, I realized that I was going to be a little bit on my own when I turned 18 and began my own studies. I had a very close cousin aunt who, right when I was getting ready to start my first job after I got my nursing degree, who told me about Roth IRAs, which now that I looked them up, they really did come out about the time I got my master's degree. So it was very lucky that I had that mentor in my life. And she encouraged me to put away the max every year. And I was able to start saving early without really even knowing what I was saving for. So that carried me through to the point where I started making a little bit more in my salary and decided I could take some time away from my paying job to do a couple of international opportunities working in healthcare overseas. So after working a few years as a nurse practitioner, I went to Congo, Brazzaville, and then worked in the Dominican Republic on health projects. And this was something I had wanted to do my entire life. And being able to have a little bit of that money set aside really helped me be able to do that. I then met the father to my kids and started a little bit more of the traditional settled down and raising kids, not working as much. So my savings went down a little bit. And then I got a divorce. And I have to tell you, since I got divorced, I've made the highest salary I've ever made. So this idea that divorce is financial ruin, my ex-husband and I really careful about how we did our divorce. We used mediation that was offered by our local court. We tried to keep it as low conflict for the kids as possible, which actually meant low cost as well. So that was really lucky. And in preparation for the case study, actually, Jackie, I looked at my Social Security statements, and the first year that I made a 3-figure salary was 2021. So I did all of the savings to get to a point where I could be financially independent, earning under $100,000 a year as a nurse practitioner.
Wow, and that's amazing. That is definitely notable. I never made over 6 figures, but one, you went and checked your Social Security statement. That's the only reason why you were able to see the history of your earnings. Anyone can do that. You can go to ssa.gov and it will go back since the beginning if you look at it online. And you saw that you didn't make over 6 figures until 4 years ago. That's fascinating. So I'm glad you were able to check that. And maybe that's just one of the things that I know you learned after we did this economy case study. And we'll get into that a little bit more. So there's a few things that you mentioned, and I know Bill is curious about some of these things as well, but let me go first. So when you went to college, you were on your own for college. Like, how did you get through school? Did you have student loans? Was anyone helping you?
So I was lucky in that I have French citizenship. My father's France, and he lived in France for most of my childhood and life. But that afforded me in-country tuition at a university in Canada, in Quebec specifically. They have an agreement with France that Canadian students pay French fees if they study in France, and the same for French students. So my tuition at McGill University was a very good education, was 800 Canadian dollars a semester when I went there, which was about 650 US dollars. So I was able to leave my undergraduate degree with no debt. I did campus tours, so I helped to pay for some of those expenses. And my dad helped me out with a monthly stipend as well. So when I left McGill, I had a degree in political science, which is not the most useful, I discovered, unless I wanted to go to law school. And I knew I wanted to work with people. So I took a couple of years to do some odd jobs here and there. And I'm telling you, Jackie, very odd jobs. Like I was a telemarketer for a hotel chain. I worked in a bakery. I did waitressing, which that only lasted 2 days. I was not a good waitress, but it taught me that that's not the kind of work I was good at. So I think every job teaches you good and sort of things that you might want to change. And then that eventually led me to nursing. I thought I wanted to go into medicine. My younger brother went into medicine, and we have a lot of medical folks in my family. I met a nurse practitioner, and they told me what they did. And I was like, that's exactly what I want to do. And I could start right away. I didn't have to take a year of the science classes that I would have needed to go to medical school. And I started a nurse practitioner program for folks who came from different backgrounds because they really needed nurses at the time. And as part of that, did the National Health Service Corps, which helped out with my loans. So I took the loans first. And then when I was a nurse practitioner, I was able to work those off by working in economically depressed sort of situations. So lots of different clinics and hospitals qualify for that. But I worked with a Spanish-speaking population outside of Boston, and I paid off those loans over 3 years. So I was able to really kind of get out of debt pretty quickly when I started my career, which was helpful because my first job was $40,000 a year. And it didn't go up very quickly from there.
Well, you learned how to college hack. You don't hear much about college hacking, but it is possible. You don't need to take on these 6-figure loans necessarily. You need to think intentionally, and that's what you did. You learned great intentional money habits early. How did that happen? Because I didn't get that. I got lucky to have a $500 a semester tuition for med school because of the state-supported med school. Obviously, one of the accidental best money decisions I ever made, but I didn't have the good habits. What were these habits and how did you learn them?
That's a good question. And I have to say, I remember being in my undergraduate degree. I was 18 years old. I opened a bank account in Montreal and I had my first debit card. This is 1990. So we're going back a little bit. And I remember going to the debit machine and getting out $5 at a time because I just knew I had to stick to a tight budget. And that was how I did it. Went down to the Peel Pub and got my 99-cent pasta, with my friends when we went out. And I think a lot of my early sort of budgeting was really based on fear that I would run out of money, which I don't think is the best way to do it, but it did kind of keep me in line. And I think that was just a fear that I would never quite have enough, or I would end up not being able to do things because I didn't have the money. And honestly, when I went to economy and did this case study, I still didn't believe that I was financially independent. Even at the end, when Jackie was like, "These are your numbers," I was like, "No, I don't really believe that."
I do. And I'll tell you this, Lisa, we'll get into that a little bit more, but the way that the economy case study works, many of the Choose FI local groups do case studies. So Lisa, are you a part of your local Choose FI group?
I am. Yeah, I haven't been able to go to a bunch of their talks, but they do case studies every once in a while.
Okay. Have you ever done a case study? Was this the first time at Economy?
I did the case study at a Camp FI in Mid-Atlantic.
Okay. So when we do it at Economy, we have this template, which we've updated it and we'll make sure everyone gets a copy. But the way that we do it is you have this template and you go through and you put in all of your numbers and things like that. And when you submitted, we got several applications. When you submitted, I looked at the numbers and I almost immediately knew that you pretty much were FI. But for the purpose of the case study, I wanted you to get that answer from the crowd, from the people in the audience. But I knew almost immediately that you were in a good place. But I'm like covering my mouth saying, I don't want to only share my opinion. Let's just do it whenever we're in this big auditorium with all these other people. So I'm glad that everyone else kind of agreed with me, but that was a time where you did get confirmation, not just from me, but from a bunch of other people. Wish that everyone would do a case study because all these revelations that you're sharing with us. So you did an amazing job with the college hacking. And one of the things that you did, what is this Nobel Peace Prize?
Oh, yeah. So I worked with an organization. The first job that I took overseas in international health was with Doctors Without Borders. And Doctors Without Borders won the Nobel Peace Prize a few years after I was with them, or a few years before, I can't remember. And so I entitled one of my blog posts, "I won the Nobel Peace Prize," as part of the organization. But it was an organization I was interested in because what they do is they go to parts of the world where there is medical need, but where there's political conflict and medicine is being used as sort of one of the pawns to control the people. So in the country that I'd gone to, there had been 3 civil wars in a row, and folks were really isolated and in rural areas where they couldn't access healthcare. So going in there was really more of a human rights mission to help the country or the local folks restart their health centers and tertiary healthcare so that they could take care of themselves. So those sort of international experiences were more what they call a witnessing sort of mission, and going there and just being there to provide the assistance that the folks on the ground need to be able to meet their own needs. And that was the way I wanted to help out in international development. And when I came back to the States and started working in nursing and immigrant communities, it was my same approach. It was, how can I give people what they need so that they can then sort of move on and get what they need health-wise and for their families.
I'm a big fan of Doctors Without Borders. We actually donate to that cause. And that's another charity we'd like to support as part of the show. The other thing you mentioned in your story, which we have to circle back on, and because this is usually a financially devastating event, you had a collaborative divorce. You looked at the potential adversarial nature of it and lawyer fees, and you decided that $450 an hour was not the way to do this. And if you approach divorce from a FI perspective and educate maybe your spouse on, we don't want this to destroy our finances. Let's just do this in a more friendly way. And that could be hard because it takes two people to do this. And you may have been lucky that your spouse was willing to proceed with this. But how did you pursue a collaborative divorce at a very cost-effective $2,000 total for the cost of your divorce, which I find incredible? We see six-figure divorces all the time. And one of my friends had one of these as an anesthesiologist in medicine.
So what happened was my ex-husband and I knew that the money that was going towards a divorce and the lawyer's fees was not going to be going towards our kids. We would continue to earn our salaries and be able to provide what we could for the kids, but this would be money that would come out of their college fund, or this would be really money that would impact their future. So both of us were on board to try and keep that cost as low as possible. I mean, there's a reason we got divorced, so there wasn't a whole lot of love between us. Focusing on the kids made it possible, right? And being able to say we're doing this for them. And in fact, when we went to our mediation sessions, I brought a picture of the kids. So they were literally in the room with us, so that when things got a little heated, we kind of got back to that touchstone. Our county courthouse offered mediation between $100 and $200 for as many visits as you needed to come up with a plan. And these were court sponsors, mediators. They just were there to sort of allow us to come up with what we needed. And once we got all of the parts put together, and that probably took 4 or 5 sessions, and we just paid that one flat fee for all of it. Each of us, me and my ex, took that plan to lawyers and paid them the hourly fee of 2 or 3 hours to look over it, make sure it was fair. We were represented by separate lawyers, make sure it was fair for us, and then put together a document that we just submitted to the court. And we had a magistrate do our sort of final divorce. This was before COVID, but we sat in a conference room in the courtroom, and the magistrate was on Zoom, and they resolved everything within just 10 minutes. Are you okay with this? Did you agree to this? And it was done. So that was the way we approached it.
This is a FI divorce. I've never heard about this kind of divorce. And you researched it and your husband was on board. And to approach it like this, I've never heard of this method. It would always seem that, oh, everybody needs a lawyer. We need to fight. But that doesn't need to be the case. In your case, you focus on the kids and the fact that it's financially beneficial. You're not going to take a big portion of your nest egg and let lawyers have it so that their kids go to college on your divorce instead of your kids going to college on the divorce.
I did do a lot of research before we went into those mediation sessions. It's a complicated document that you come up with, and you don't just want to go in there and not have any idea. It's actually just a series of books that was put out, and I believe it's NOLO, but I can make sure that and get you that information if you want to put it in the show notes, because they are a nonprofit that just publishes books for the layperson to help them with legal situations they get into. And they have a whole series. You order the book, there's no extra costs. And so I had this book that we were working through, and I could say to my ex, okay, if we're going to be looking at this aspect of the divorce, here's the checklist we need to have. So that took some footwork, but it was free, for $20 for the book, something like that.
So Lisa, you, at the time you were doing this method, you were in the state of Maryland, is that right? Was it something that the state provided, that process? And I'm guessing that it would vary by state. So I guess for our other late starters, if they wanted to try to do something similar, they would probably check with their state and see what options they might have that's similar to this.
My ex was Baltimore County. So I went to that courthouse, and they have a family law center, and they also have a self-help law center. And within that, that's where I found about this mediation. So it was pretty easy to access. It was online, and it was just a matter of taking advantage of it and signing up for that.
A quote from you on one of your blogs is, "You might not see this line often in the FIRE community, but here it is. Divorce equals financial freedom." Oh my God. So, I mean, it's possible. You did write a blog on this, but we need to get that out there so that other women know that, and men, that this is possible, okay? And you don't need to ding your nest egg to do this. I'm constantly impressed, not that I'm planning on getting divorced, but now we know how to do it from a very cost-effective perspective. The other thing you wrote a blog about that fire people often say, oh no, we got to do single FI, we got to do dink FI. But you did FI with 3 kids and say that kids actually speed your journey to fire. How does that work?
Well, that's a good question because that's also not so obvious. I knew I was a single mom and had the kids 90% of the time, which was exhausting. And thinking of my 2-year-old at the time of my divorce, who was my youngest, now is 13, but by the time he was 18, having that goal to be financially independent so that I could kind of get back to what I wanted to do in my life after raising these lovely, lovely children was something that just locked everything in. It's when I found FI, it gave me something to aim for. I was very intentional about how I was raising my kids to be able to save for that goal. So all 3 of my kids went to public school. I did as much as I could in terms of enrichment and volunteering and helping out, but they were great public schools. I might be jumping ahead, but my 19-year-old just finished his first year of college, got a 100% free ride from merit scholarships, and received a $3,500 check back from his college because he got that much money. I was really, really careful and intentional about how I was raising them and that timeline. My kids are, in this sense, really easy to raise as financially independent beings because they're not really into a lot of high fashion, high cost stuff. We tend to travel to visit family. So I drive my cars into the ground, and my son just bought his first car for $4,500. So just really being conscious about how we're spending money as a family. All 3 have retirement accounts that they set up with just little earnings they made around the neighborhood first, and now have paying jobs. And so being able to share this with them and see them pick up on it motivates me more. And they'll call me out. I presented at a nursing conference out in California, and I took 2 of my kids with me. And we checked into the hotel, and there was a little bit of a delay with the room. And my 16-year-old says to the person at the front desk, well, because of this delay, is it possible to get some sort of a credit for the time that we're here?
Oh, I love that. That's so good. It's so funny. As kids get older, you will start to see what stuck that you tried to teach them, whether it was verbally telling them or them watching and modeling your behavior. That is probably your one son getting the free ride. You had a lot to do with that. I wanted to take a quick detour on that because student loans are out of control now, and that is such a crazy thing, including parents getting out student loans on behalf of their children. I've always thought that there's so many ways that we can help our kids get through college versus just pulling out of our pocketbooks. What did you do with him to help him get that full ride scholarship? Because that became way more valuable than you taking out student loans or him taking out student loans.
So he applied through a public school in a low income city. A lot of colleges really want to invest in Baltimore City kids. And so being a graduate from a Baltimore City high school, he immediately automatically got $5,000 merit money every single year he goes to the college that he chose, just for graduating from Baltimore City School. So that public education ended up paying even more than what I expected. He applied through his financial scholarship aid there at the high school, gets money for a lot of kids that have a lot of financial need. We completed those federal forms that you fill out for financial aid, the FAFSA, and we didn't qualify for anything. Not even a federal subsidy for a job on campus or a loan. So they were able to help him apply for merit scholarships that he was interested, both locally and some ones that were for the college that he ended up going to. The hospital that I work for has a tuition reimbursement program for our dependents, and so that helped as well. All of that just added up to him getting some good money. We did actually go to the Department of Financial Aid at the college that he chose, and we were able to negotiate a little bit more money than what they had initially offered. It ended up being more than he needed, but he went through that. He had an interview on Zoom with the financial aid director and talked about what he felt like he needed to be able to attend there, and they gave him more money.
We're going to have episodes with a couple people who are experts in this arena, Ron Lieber being one of them, so that other people can take advantage of what you did. And they have a couple books out there that are worth doing, because this can be one of the biggest financial decisions you make that launches you more towards FI and earlier age when you have kids, is to harvest this money that's out there waiting to be used. And you did that. And we're going to try and help our audience do the same thing.
So thank you for walking us through that. I just thought that was very important. So for anyone listening to this, you might want to hit rewind on that one and listen and play that one back, because it's a great nugget. So Lisa, why don't we talk a little bit about you as a nurse practitioner? You have a huge heart, so I think you're the perfect person. This is the perfect career for you. You said you spent part of your time doing international nursing, some in the U.S., but you also spent a little bit of time in Knoxville. Bill, she might have been your neighbor.
Yeah, I had no idea. She was here during the Peyton Manning years, enjoyed that. You've got to come back to visit Knoxville and visit me. It would be awesome to have you back down here. How was your time here in Knoxville?
Oh, beautiful. I remember walking along the lake down there. They had incredible 4th of July fireworks that would cascade off of the bridges downtown. There was a revitalization of downtown when I was there with some new shops, and it's so friendly, so close to the mountains. We would go to Asheville as part of the hiking and canoeing club. So it was a wonderful experience I had there in Knoxville.
That's great. The other thing that people need to know about you is you speak French and Spanish. You had this French father, and you also make comments about the French's approach versus the American approach to finances and retirement. You talk about the joie de vivre and c'est la vie. So tell us a little bit about what's the difference? What do they do? And where would you prefer to live and retire?
Well, that's a great question. I was born in the States. We lived in France with my dad until I was almost age 5. So my first language was French. I grew up in Texas, and I spoke English with a French accent in Texas. So you can imagine it's a different kind of YOLO in France and maybe in most of Europe, and that they really enjoy their time off, and they will pay top dollar for really quality food and experiences, but they tend to travel within France or nearby. Right? At least my family doesn't do as much of the international travel, so they keep costs down that way. And they tend to travel to see family or friends. So a lot of people are staying with people when they travel and use less hotels or that sort of thing. But they also have an incredible safety net. My father passed away in 2019, and his medical care, which was complicated for 5 years before he passed, unfortunately, was all covered by the state. And there was never a worry that his care wouldn't be covered. And excellent care. As a nurse practitioner, I knew when he went into sepsis, the antibiotics they were talking about treating him were the same ones we use in our ICUs. So it was top-notch care. But at the same time, it just is a sense that people are taken care of in the country, yourself included. And yes, you pay higher taxes for that, but everybody has enough to not be desperate. And of course, homelessness exists. And of course, there's financial difficulties. But it seems to me that there is a base sort of living wage that everybody has access to what they need, and even to some nicer things.
When I was in high school, the required foreign language was French. So I know parlez-vous français, Jacqueline, ou Janine. So I just said, my name is Jacqueline from the United States. So I was able to catch some of that. That's pretty interesting that you could actually compare it to another area. So now, did you say which one you would want to retire to?
If I had my druthers, it would be between the two. I am still very close to my stepmother. In fact, we're going to see each other this summer. And I love the pace of life there. I love spending time with her. I have some cousins that I enjoy over there. So if I could do half and half, can I say that? Do half and half.
Yeah, that's perfect. And you know what? You have the option to do half and half, where you can comfortably speak both languages. Now, do your kids know French as well? Did they pick that up?
A little bit. I am embarrassed to say that my dad being French and my mom being a French teacher for 55 years before she retired, we did not speak French to my kids as much as I would have liked to. My eldest, I did for the first 2 years of his life. It was his first language, but when he started daycare and school, he quickly lost that. But my kids do have French passports, and they are great travelers. So my hope is that they will, of their initiative, be able to pick up some French.
What's important is we have sort of home country bias, and I lived in Germany for 2 years. I was very fortunate to do so. There was many days and for a length of time that I was fluent in German, wouldn't speak English in the country when people asked me. And you get a different perspective on the benefits and downsides of living where you live when you live outside of the bubble, so to speak. I would encourage people to study abroad, for example, in college if they can. And I did it through a work-study program. It is possible to hack these experiences where it's not so expensive, just like you did that. And during med school, I also hacked going to Alaska and working for the National Health Service for the Native Americans. It's entirely possible to do these things. You've just got to be resourceful and intentional in doing it. I want to mention too, before we get into your numbers and your case study and what happened afterwards, that you also, as part of your blog, wrote a personal FI statement. And I found this really intentional and purposeful, probably on your beginning journey to FI. And I would encourage people to go to this blog and read this statement because it's very thorough. I have a feeling it was based on the White Coat Investor a little bit because it seemed a lot like his template. Am I right?
Yeah, I based it on that and tried to make it very intentional. Now being closer to maybe needing my retirement funds, that will change a little bit. But yeah, at the time, it was really helpful for me to have that written down, even if no one else read it, just to know where sort of my goalpost was.
Yeah, I love it. And we will link to the blog that you've had in the past, but I understand that you are updating that. I want to encourage you to do that because we absolutely loved many of your articles there. Bill was saying all the different places that he worked and practiced and things like that. Can you just take us through the different places that you were practicing as a nurse practitioner and a little bit about that?
So while I was in nursing school, I applied for just a graduate school scholarship that allowed us to do a research project in the summer. And I went to Honduras. And for 2 months, I worked on looking at vaccine rates and accessibility. Actually found out, Bill, that the vaccination rate in rural Honduras was higher than in East Tennessee at the time. I know vaccines are a hot topic right now, but at the time there was a push to vaccinate 100% of the population. And so I came back to Tennessee with some ideas about vaccination. So that was kind of an interesting time, but I really solidified my Spanish speaking skills there. So my first job out of school was in Boston, which is a really hard place to get a medical gig because there are a lot of medical schools there, a lot of nursing schools. And so being able to get into medicine there was solely because I spoke Spanish. So that was my first job. I worked with Dominicans and Puerto Ricans in downtown Boston in an area called Mission Hill. And then from there, worked north of Boston in Lynn, Massachusetts, which also has a high percentage of Spanish speakers. And so for 3 or 4 years, every single day I was using my Spanish, speaking Spanish, and I really became fluent by doing that. I started off by using translators, really listening to how they were speaking Spanish, and then being able to increase my vocabulary. So those were my first 2 positions. Then overseas, I worked with Doctors Without Borders, and I worked with an organization called Catholic Relief Services in the Dominican Republic. I worked in Puerto Rico as a research nurse, and then came back to the States, worked at the National Institutes of Health, and I worked in oncology in brain cancer. And then my job that I've had for the last 20 years since I moved to Baltimore is with the University of Maryland, working in an immigrant clinic. So all Spanish speakers, all folks without other access to healthcare. And it's just been a delight. It's a wonderful place. I initially did a primary care there. And I went back about 7 years ago, got a second sort of specialty, a certificate in psychiatry. And now I do the mental health services for them. When I went to do more psychiatry there, I got a different full-time position. So I was keeping my position at University of Maryland. And that's the position that I just left. I was working in child and adolescent psychiatry for almost 7 years. And that's the one where I left to, after the case study, realizing I had money set aside that I could take a sabbatical or mini retirement, and then hopefully to be able to go into teaching.
All right. It's time to get into that. But before we do that, I want to say child adolescent psychiatry. My wife is a child adolescent psychiatrist. So I get it. And you job hopped And each time you job hopped, you increased your salary. And with that last certificate in mental health, that's when you hit six figures. And now let's get into the numbers of your FI journey. Jackie, this is your game.
So I had the honor of working with you, Lisa. The way that we arrived at the person that got selected for the case study is that we threw it out to people that were coming to economy, and anyone could apply that was attending economy already. So I didn't want to just be biased and just pick one, because we have a lot of synergies and people will say, oh yeah, Jackie just picked her because she's so much like her. But I wanted to be as objective as possible. So I had 6 other individuals in my life that were familiar with 5 case studies. I anonymized the case studies, and these were the people that looked at it were very different. Like, they were from different groups and things like that, but they knew what a case study was. And your name ended up being the one that got chosen. So that's how we did that. And everyone that applied, they have to be very transparent with their numbers, and we are looking at some very personal things about your finances. And so this is a brave thing to do, but these case studies help other people. There's no better way to help people mindfully think about their own numbers by seeing someone else's, not to compare, but to get a sense of, this is how she was thinking through this. This is what she did. And not that you're perfect, because there was a lot of things that you wanted some help with. I just wanted to show like a little snapshot, I guess, of what you have going on. So Lisa, just to get a quick summary of your numbers here, and then we can dive into a few of them. Your gross income was $140,000. But again, you never got to $100,000 until 2021. Is that right?
That's right.
Your expenses were about $72,000. You had a savings rate of 44%. You know, we talk a lot in the FI community about how important that savings rate is. And then your FI number ended up being $1.8 million, which is 25 times your expenses, not your income, but your annual expenses. Your net worth at the time that we did the case study was 1.5 million. So you were very, very close. And then you have current debt of $75,000. So does all that look okay?
That's right.
Okay, so that's what we started with. So we have a few questions about some of your numbers. Bill, what do you want to start with?
Well, I'm just impressed with the 44% savings rate and limiting the expenses. I was a single digit saver, as I call it, under 10%, because I spent first and saved last once a year at tax time when I was like, what's left over? The exact reverse of what you need to be doing. And I did this for 15, 20 years, or we did, my wife and I. And we didn't know what net worth was. We didn't know what tracking your expenses meant. We didn't know what a budget was, because it was like, we thought we were rich, but we were not wealthy. There's a huge difference between the two. So how did you do this 44% savings rate with 3 kids?
It's funny that you say that the opposite of what you're supposed to do. I guess I did what I was supposed to do without even knowing I was supposed to do it. I have all of the contributions to my work IRA taken out as soon as possible in the year. So I try to save extra towards the end of the year, so that in the first almost 3.5 months of the year, I have very little income coming in from my work, and it's all going to the 403B, which was $30,000 a year for my age last year. So even leaving my job for the first almost 3 months of the year, I didn't get any income because I was trying to max that out before I left. So I did that right away. I did the individual IRA. I put aside every month. It just comes straight out of my bank account. So went ahead and maxed that out at $7,000. And I would then put all of the rest of the money in savings and move over what my expenses were at the start of the month and see if I could live off of that. And if there was a larger expense, my car needs brakes, or I have some home improvement project that's not terribly expensive, I can take it out of my savings without dipping into my larger savings, I would do that. And so at the end of the month, I would usually have something left over just from that income that was coming in. And then I would put that in my brokerage account. So that was sort of not a very scientific method. I wasn't great about budgeting, but I was generally careful, and it ended up sort of working out.
Well, you also developed towards the end a health savings account near and dear to Jackie's heart. And then something else, though, you maxed that out for the last 5 years of your career, which was a great way to help with or defer things like your Medicare premiums later in life. And then one thing that you did very interestingly was one part of your annual savings was your mom's mortgage. Tell us about that one.
Oh, I'm glad we get to talk about that. So, my mom lives next door to me. I'm literally in my living room. There's a wall separating our two homes. We live in a duplex, and she ran into a little bit of more financial need a couple of years ago and wanted to do a reverse mortgage on her home. And my brothers and I were quite alarmed when we heard this. She had actually already signed the papers. And when she sent out the text, all three of us were like, no, I don't think this is a good idea. Is there some other way we can do this? And so my mom and I, we wrote it out, had a lawyer just do a simple codicil to her will that I would help her out, giving her $1,000 a month towards her mortgage, although she can spend it however she wants, and she has, until she received an inheritance that she was expecting. And that has just happened. And so that was about, 5 or 6 years now of just every month sort of investing in her $1,000 a month with some repayment when she eventually is able to get that inheritance. And it was sort of the real estate portion of my investments because I didn't have any other real estate and I didn't really use that in my investment accounts. So it was a way to help her out in a way that I felt it was sort of diversified. And it was a really good way for me to save that because that was another 1,000 that just came straight out and went straight to her at the start of the month.
Well, you're a caregiver at heart. And you obviously have a bleeding heart for the healthcare world and things that you did, but it carries over into caring for your family. I know Frank Vasquez does the same thing because his parents lived longer than they expected. And his dad was a doctor, and he realized that he needed to help out his father. So we become part of the sandwich generation. You can have the boomerang kid, and you can have the parents that maybe didn't get it right and need your help. And you've got to kind of plan for that instead of having these surprises. So I'm very impressed that you did that. Another thing you did was to help jumpstart your kids' savings, and you matched their Roth IRAs, which I think is a great way to transfer wealth early in their life. And I agree with sort of holding back a little bit. And then what's left at the end of the month for me does also go into the brokerage account. And I'm happy to manage that and make that as much as possible and gamify it.
And thank you for bringing up about my kids too. It is a mommy match. It's the awesome mommy match in our household. And so whatever they earn, they can put that into their account. And sort of the way that I encourage them to do that is I have them think about their retirement account as a savings account, because I do tell them they can take that money out. But I've also instilled never do that. So they put their money into their Roth and they know that they can take those earnings out someday. It's more than a savings account because I do try to encourage them to keep it in there for as long as possible. And for both my kids and my parents, I feel like, especially when you're working with your older parents and it's the sandwich generation and folks who grew up post World War I or soon thereafter, they don't like the idea of just being given money. So for my mom, it would never have worked for me to give her $1,000 a month or my brothers and I to come up with some sort of fund. Her being able to say, I figured out this way to do it. Now you all are proposing this other way, but both ways, this is my decision and I will repay you the money when I can. And for my kids, it's the same thing. It's having that skin in the game. It's seeing that, you're doing this together. And I think that's important for people's just motivation in terms of savings.
Yeah, great point. So, Lisa, I have a question for you. So, the kids' money is going into a Roth IRA, correct? Did you consider like the UTMA or any other, I guess, investment or savings vehicles for them?
I did do the UTMA for my youngest before he started having an earned income. So he's 13. So he does have that account. It's not as big now as I think his Roth IRA will be because we'll start transferring to using that vehicle. But I did do that for him because he was so young when we started. And I also worked with them to choose a stock that they were interested in. And of course, I was talking about index, but one of them was really passionate about the environment. And so we were looking at ESG funds for them. One is really techie and wanted a little bit of Apple in theirs. So we made sure that they had a fund that had Apple in it. My son is really, really into soccer. So we really couldn't find anything for him. But I told him we're going to do one that has education.
And that is how you teach your kids about investing. It has to be something that's relatable and something that matters to them. Calling it a retirement account, that's not going to get it. So it's a tip for you, Lecture Daddy. So Lisa is talking to her kids about what they actually love to do and finding a way to relate that. The techie person, they know Apple. Okay, let's go buy Apple stock. You don't have to literally go buy Apple stock, but you start to show them some things that will help them feel like they're an owner and understand that this is part of their long-term savings. So I absolutely love that.
Well, then you can say you can have Apple, but then you're going to have Microsoft too. Look, you can buy this and you can have so much if you do this. You know, you are a huge Roth fan, and we got to get into your net worth a little bit and how it breaks down, because Roth is a huge part of your net worth. Take us through what it looks like, because you told us that it's 1.5 million, but where is it?
You know, it's funny because I made a good friend, I consider a friend now, at Economy. And we have had many dialogues about the Roth because I feel a little bit like a Roth addict. Like I would almost put myself in a higher tax bracket, which I know is not anyone's advice, just in order to get more Roth money in. And since I just left my position, I have like 220,000 that I put in there before my employer had a Roth option that is traditional funds. And I am just so itching to use that. And he keeps telling me, just hold off, look at Bolden, play that out. And I know we'll get into talking about Bolden in a little bit and see if it makes sense. And it doesn't, and I still want to do it. But I started off early on. My first investments were in Roth when I found out about it because my income wasn't high. I didn't feel like I needed to do the traditional as much. When my husband and I separated, we had a division of his retirement account. So $150,000, which was half of his account, came to me. And I immediately, over 2 years, so $75,000 a year, converted that into Roth. And I paid a lot of tax on that. But that really started my nest egg, and adding to that the Roth that I had. And then when my employer became eligible to do Roth, $30,000 a year in Roth for the last, I think, 3 years, that's just sort of added up to where I have more in my Roth IRA than I do in my other employer plans.
It's about half of your net worth, or almost that. It's in the 40% range. And then what's interesting is, did you get the investments right? Because you have a very relatively simple portfolio. Did you get that right from the beginning, or did you have to adjust to more? Because there's only about, in some of the accounts, 3, 4, 5 funds, and in others less. And you have a very diversified portfolio. Tell us about the evolution of that. Did it start with mistakes, and how did you end up at where your investments are?
Right. So my same wonderful auntie who told me about the Roth told me to put it in actually artisan funds at the start, and then pretty quickly Vanguard. So I've been in the Vanguard similar to VTSAX or a VTI since I started investing. And I've always had money on the side and in cash, or I have a small bond fund to make sure I have money for emergencies. But otherwise, I really do put most of my money into the index funds there at Vanguard whenever I can. A mistake I made, oh my gosh. Okay, my biggest financial mistake was when COVID happened. Even though I had stuck to my plan all the way through from 1998 when I really started investing to 2020, I really did think this was going to be different. And I could not see how our economy could continue when everyone was at home. And I took out about $200,000 and took it out of the stock market, still within my retirement account, but just put it in a money market, whatever my settlement account was. And I lost about $50,000 in that 1 month, sold really low. And then it bounced right back in that month around March, April. I still regret that. I guess it's not as big a financial error as I could have made, but that was a really, really big lesson to me to stay the course, no matter how stark things look. I have an investment plan and I need to stick with it.
Yeah, I did the same thing at the bottom of the Great Recession. I did it with bigger numbers. Unfortunately, I kept it out for a while and missed out on half or so of the boom after the Great Recession. So not knowing what you're doing. And my brother-in-law recently did the same thing during the Liberation Day debacle of tariffs. He got scared and did the same thing. So it's emotional, as Jackie said. It's very emotional. It's hard to watch your nest egg drop by 20, 30, 40%. And that's where you've got to listen to J.L. Collins' meditation, read your personal financial statement and say, I am not supposed to do anything. Just stand there.
Yeah, and that's the big question for Lisa. So we just experienced another really big drop in April, that Liberation Day, which I think was April 2nd. So since the beginning of the year, the market had been dropping, but then that early April, it dropped like a rock. So what did you do when that happened in April of this year?
That was my last month of work. I left May the 8th. So April, I was still, like I told you, putting as much as I could. I think I had $3.40 every 2 weeks from my paycheck because I was putting all of that money and I didn't stop. I had a 8% match. That money went in low. All of the 4,000 or something I put in each paycheck went in low, and I just kept putting it in.
Well, you got excited about quote unquote buying the dip and putting more in at the time. And we should all dollar cost average into the market and not wait to buy the dip because that is a financial loser. But you just got excited and said, oh, it's on sale. I'm going into Target, the market, and I'm just going to buy more. I'm going to use the money I have and dollar cost average at a higher amount.
And another thing, Bill, was her individual circumstances. So since she was leaving her job in order to get in that money into her 403B. So in order for her to get that in there, she had to do it while she was still working. Mm-hmm. So was that part of your strategy as well, trying to get money in?
Trying to get money in, and also as early in the year as I could, but also because after that, at the end of May, I wasn't going to have any more contributions. So I got to about 27,000 of the 30,000 that I was eligible to put in. And then I'll continue dollar cost averaging through the year with my Roth IRA. So even though it's not as much, it's the 7,000, I still feel like I'm still putting in the market. But I was pretty sure for the rest of the year, or at least until the end of the year, if I do start working again towards the end of the year, I wasn't going to get another chance. So that's exactly right, Jackie.
All right. So then the case study came. And we got to get into this because we got to get into what happened next.
Hold on just a second, Bill. We didn't look at her expenses because that is so critical. Now, I don't want to go through all of them, but I just was very interested in how you segmented your expenses. So you had your essential expenses, and then you had your optional expenses. So the essentials was around 44,000, and then the optional one. So how do you think about your optional expenses?
So these are things where I feel like I can adjust. I mean, we are all going to get haircuts. We are all going to buy clothes, but how can I maybe give a little bit less in charity if I need to, or how can I take down their allowance if I need to? These were areas where I felt like if I needed to save more, I could draw from these. So that was why I put those sort of as an optional. And that was really helpful for me to look at and say, I have $27,000 that I can mess around with a little bit there if I need to, if I really get into dire straits. And one thing that the case study really taught me is that some of these costs will go down when the kids leave, and have already with one of my kids leaving, and some of them will not. So realizing that was really helpful to me too, to think about what number I wanted to live off in retirement.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the points that we all try to, I guess, remind our late starters that one of the superpowers they may have is that the kids are grown, the kids are out of the house, and now you have more disposable income. So I just wanted to just highlight that real quick. So I'm gonna let you take it away, Bill.
Well, it happened to us too. The empty nest is a powerful time. You have the catch-up contributions in your 50s, and you have more disposable income because the kids have exited the building, so to speak. Now, we heard all this story at the case study, and you were very transparent, but you actually took action. What kind of actions did you take after the case study?
So after the case study, I put in my notice.
Yay.
April 8th, I knew that I had enough to bridge the gap with the income that I had coming in from my other position. I met with 1 hour of fees for service financial advisor through Nectarine. I was given that. Thank you very much. An hour with Nectarine that was donated for the person who participated in the case study. And he was fabulous. He knew exactly what I needed to do. We got on Vanguard together. We chose from my brokerage account the funds that would have the least amount of capital gain, literally choosing them lot by lot. And I transferred that money over. So I had that ready to go. And that's the money that I've been using as needed when I've needed to over the last almost 2 months. So that was incredibly empowering.
So just clarification. So when he went through lot by lot, can you explain what that is, what the lots are? Was this your brokerage account?
This was my brokerage account, right? Okay. So I wasn't trying really hard not to touch any of that retirement savings and hoping to let that keep growing. So this was my brokerage account, and I had about 220,000 in there. So I'm not sure how much I had at the time, but probably pretty similar. And I looked at the stocks that had made the most over time and tried to avoid, first of all, any short-term gains, but going back to ones that hadn't really grown all that much. So I had some small cap value and some emerging market, and I think some international, and then some VTSAX or more US funds that I had bought at times that hadn't grown as much, but were at least a year old so that they wouldn't get that short-term gain. And we just chose those and sold those very strategically. And he showed me how to do that, which is powerful because now I can do that myself. So I took notes.
That's called spec ID. And people talk about first in, first out selling, last in, first out, LIFO and FIFO, which you can look up. But spec ID is a powerful tool where you can look at where you bought them. And that's also how you look at doing tax loss harvesting. There's strategy there, and it's a little technical, but at least it may spark an interest in looking up those terms, right, Jackie? Now, you didn't just use Nectarine. You also were given the gift of Bolden. And that's a sponsor of the show, as is Nectarine. We're very proud of these people. They do great work. Tell us how you use Bolden to help you make these decisions.
Well, Bolden was fantastic because I've never used any kind of financial software. I go into Vanguard and mess around with their tools a little bit. As you all know, as I've said, I'm not great about budgeting. So I haven't used very much. I used Mint for a little bit, but wasn't great about keeping up. I tend to just do my budget, go through my statements and write everything out so that I came up with my expenses that way. But Bolden really helped me look at exactly what I had in terms of my savings and where it all laid out, how it would grow, projecting different scenarios, what it would look like for me to do a Roth conversion if I decided to. There were so many great things about it. They had tutorials. I went to about 5 different tutorials on how to use the software. They had YouTube videos. And then I was at a conference about a month after Economy, and somebody else in the group knew Bold and sat down with me and spent an hour with me going through it. So I learned lots about how to use this amazing tool, and I log on and I get to see my net worth right away, and I get all excited because before I'm like writing down the numbers. So it's a very powerful tool for me.
Yeah. Thank you for giving us the background on your experience with them, because we love them and that's why they're a sponsor of the show. And we know they provide good tools, but there's nothing like an individual actually using it and sharing their experience. Now for Nectarine, do you remember who you used? I know it's been a while.
I can get you the name.
I'll drop it in the show notes. I guess I just wanted to give them credit because this is who you worked with and you seem to be very happy with them. And I guess, Bill, you were saying that it gets very technical. I don't know that it's all that hard. Like, Lisa, how would you describe going through the different lots? Like the way you explained it, you use layman's terms. I don't know that we need to use all those fancy terms. So it sounds like your person was just going through the different lots, which showed the date, and it showed the amount that you paid for it and how much the growth was. Like, it can be broken down just that simple. Did you find that to be easy?
It was that simple, Jackie. And in fact, when we looked at the individual lots next to it, there was a little green arrow or a little red arrow. It told me exactly how much it had made. So it was like, oh, well, I only have to pay tax on $1.50 if I do this one. And I had very little that had gone down. So we didn't do any tax loss harvesting with him. It was just looking at sort of the ones that had grown the least. And it was just about that simple.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that because I just think I have my CFP and everything, but I think sometimes things are made out to be more complex than they need to be. So hearing directly from you, just as a regular person, seeing this for the first time, how you felt about it. So thank you for that.
One thing that I was fascinated by at the time of your mini retirement was you have a high risk tolerance. I mean, you were like 95% stock funds. And me being a little more conservative, that worried me going into a non-working phase, even though you're going to be kind of coast-fi with a lesser paying, maybe less hours involved job after the 6 months. So you're not like completely cold turkey retired necessarily, and you're enjoying your 6 months. But did you make any adjustments in your portfolio knowing that you were only going to be living off of that?
Well, as I said, I didn't know I was anywhere near being able to leave my job when I went to economy. So I was just like full steam ahead. And then when I realized that, I was like, oh, there was some of the comments that people made were, what if there is some stock market volatility, or what if you lost a large amount? Where would you draw from? And so as a nurse, I know I can go back anytime and get a well-paying job and be fine. So I have that luxury. But since leaving my job, I haven't adjusted a whole lot. I know that I need to be a little bit more careful if I'm going to be drawing from my brokerage account, even is in stocks. I do worry a little bit about that, but I felt since I was able to move that money over right away, and I had 6 months of being able to live off of that, I just stayed the course. And if I don't have work in 6 months in the area that I'd like to work in, I'll just go back to a clinical job, and I know I can and make enough to make that up. So I do have that luxury.
So you mentioned a couple of different like conferences or courses that you did. After you left economy, the work didn't stop there. You talked with a Nectarine advisor, fee only, advice only person. You started using Bolden. You looked at your numbers again. You ran your numbers, and then you had two other things that helped you along in that sort of, I think I can retire mode.
Yeah. So the wonderful women who do the Northeast FI, their first conference from WE, which is Wealth Empowerment.
I think it's Women Empowered. So it's like the We Women Collective. And I think the WE is Women Empowered. Hope I got that right.
And I met up with Zuzka, Kim, and Chantal at Economy, and they told me about this conference they were having in about a month. It was in Maryland. It's incredibly lucky. And there were no spots, but I'll put you on the wait list. And it turns out someone had to cancel it about a week before. And I got to go to this great conference where we talked about lots of things, financial independence, but mostly it was just such a great group of about 30, 40 women just talking about our lives and what we wanted to do with our future and challenges and struggles and lots of positive energy. So that was just fantastic. Another organization, and actually we still keep in touch. I just did a book group with them 2 nights ago. We read The Psychology of Money and we were talking about that. So it was really fun to get back together as a little group. And then at Economy, I met the Pioneers, and they had talked about Coast Fire as part of their talk. And I was like, that's interesting. I wonder what that could look like for me. And they had an online course that I did called Coast with Confidence. I knew I needed something to keep me moving in the direction of really making sure I stayed focused on my finances and on my goals. So those were 2 just really great opportunities I had.
Yay. So the learning continued.
And you also met at Economy, and I think this did make a change for you, Janine Firpo. And what about her talk changed some investing philosophy? Because we've had her on the show, and I want to encourage people to go back to that episode where she talks about activate your money.
Yes, activate your money. And I made a big change in my retirement account, in my Roth account, where I had my money in VTI and VTSAX, depending on when I bought it, but they're essentially the same fund. And I looked at her slides, and her talk was wonderful about really putting on a graph where VTSAX and where VSEG, which is the similar indexed Vanguard fund that chooses different companies that are environmentally responsible, have higher percentage of women on their boards, lots of different ideas that I believe in. And she was able to show me over time how they really index so close to each other. And sometimes the ESG funds even did better. And I was like, listen, even if I lose a little bit, I'm still willing to put my money where there's really values that I believe in. And so I shifted all of my Vanguard Roth IRA funds into that. And it was, I think, a total of over about 450,000. Yeah, that I put into that ESG fund based on that. And I also talked to my kids about it, and we put all their funds into there too. So
Okay, Lisa, we've talked about your case study. We've talked about the blind spots, the action plan, but entering into a no work phase, mini retirement, not that there's no work, but you're leaving your traditional work and you've got 6 months. How did you organize this? And how come you're not watching Netflix and chill every day?
That's funny that you say that, Bill, because my first thought was I might just spend the first week watching Netflix. And I couldn't. I tried, but I was too much still in sort of the hamster wheel. I used to get up every morning at 4:00 to do my notes before I went into clinic. So I would wake up in the morning at 4:00 and be like, oh, I don't have any notes to do. I don't have work to go to. What do I do? And it did feel a little bit, in French, they say dépaysé. You're out of country. You're a fish out of water a little bit. To not have work after having worked since I was probably 12 and started babysitting. But I thought about 2 or 3 things that I wanted to accomplish in these next 4 to 6 months I gave myself. One was a home improvement project I've been wanting to do forever, which is paint the fence. And first I started with all of the home improvement I wanted to do, but then I was like, I don't have time or inclination to do that over the next 6 months, so I'm going to choose one thing. The second thing was a really conscious effort to spend time with family, my kids and also my mom, but also just kind of to take time to do the things that I usually was either too tired or just too rushed to do. So I took my kids on a trip with me to California when I went to a nursing conference. I was there anyway. And I was like, this year I'm going to take the kids. I took my mom and my brother out to dinner to celebrate. I just got my doctoral degree. I don't know if we talked about that before.
Congratulations.
My mom has a PhD and my brother is a medical doctor. So we went to a doctor dinner where all we did the whole dinner was say, Doctor, will you pass the wine? Oh, and we just talked to each other as if we were all 3 doctors. So, and just a couple of other things, spend time with friends, have some get-togethers that I just wouldn't have had the energy to do before. So that was my second thing. And then the third thing was really to think about what direction I wanted as I continued my career. Because being a nurse, being a healer, a caregiver is something that's been always part of my identity. And I know I want to move forward in working with people and helping people, but in a different way. I didn't want to be involved in as much sort of direct care, but helping put them in a position where they could do things to help themselves. So teaching new nurses how to take care of people, supporting patients in a way that they can move forward. I wanted to think about how I could do that in my next steps. So those were the 3 things I felt like if I accomplished that, I've been successful. And I didn't want to put too much on myself outside of that. Of course, things creep in and there's all sorts of opportunities. I've thought about doing different things, but I did try to sort of make it a sabbatical or a mini retirement around those 3 aspects.
Well, we just had Jillian Johnsrud on the show. She is the mini retirement guru. And I think she says the same thing, 3 to 5 things, no more. And you can plan your mini retirement around that so that they're reasonable, smart goals for time-sensitive accomplishments. You're doing, without having been coached by her or read her book, exactly what she talks about. So we've got to connect you with her so you can be on her podcast.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me. So you are taking what you did as a career and you're extending it in a way that's on your own terms. So you love the work that you did, but you don't necessarily want it to be within the confines of the regular day job. And I feel like some people have trouble deciding what they would do if they weren't working every day. Like you had to make a transition. So is there a reason why you want to just do a mini or temporary retirement versus just saying, I'm retiring for good?
Well, I know myself and I know I love to work, help, learn. So I know that'll be part of not working for money or for the same salary that I had. But I took a page from Arthur Brooks, who's written several books and has had so many different careers. And what he's taken from that, I think he's probably around retirement age or maybe a little younger, looking at his career and saying the first 20 years or so of my career was very detail oriented. I would stay up all night. I would do all the things. And I got to a point about 20 years into my career, which he thinks is sort of a pivotal or a perfect time to transition, to use that, what he calls crystallized intelligence, and really put that to work in something where you're taking all of that experience and instead of giving it to one patient or one person, you're using that to influence or to affect more change in a larger way. And so that's when I started really thinking about that, how to shift my career so that I can take what I've learned. I'm not going to start all over and be a mechanical engineer, but within healing and caregiving, how can I use those experiences and pass them on, if you will?
Jackie talks about this as one to many, and that's what she's doing too. Rather than one-on-one, it's one to many. And I also talk about the 20-year time frame where I talk about work 20 for the money and the rest for joy. Pay your debt off in 5, get to FI in 15. And if people just looked at their life like that, that creates the Renaissance career. That creates the next chapter, because burnout, I feel, happens at about 20 years.
Yeah, I love that term, Renaissance career. I've never heard that before. I love that, Bill.
Yeah, I was going to bring up that wonderful saying of yours, Bill, the 20 for the money and the rest for joy. So that was kind of the same thing Lisa was talking about with Arthur Brooks.
Yeah, we'll have to put a link in the show notes. But thank you for telling us about the challenges and the opportunities of a mini retirement. You're in the middle of it. You're probably as busy as ever. Have you finished the fence yet or not?
I haven't started the fence yet, but I have planned a trip over to France to see my family this summer. So I'm looking forward to that. And I have had a lot more time with my kids. In fact, I think they're probably ready for me to have less time with them.
Awesome.
All right.
So Lisa, let's put a bow on this, because now you've done your case study. You've done all this additional education. You have thoroughly reviewed the Lisa's life. And what is your big decision? Like, what's the next chapter of what Lisa's going to be doing from here on out?
Well, what this has really allowed me to do is make a shift within my nursing career to do something that I've wanted to do for a long time, which is teaching. I love my clinical care and I'll keep my clinical care job with my immigrant community, but I wanted to move out of full-time clinical care and take what I've learned and being able to offer that to new nurses who have more energy and passion about this than I do at the end of my career. So that requires a salary decrease. And it also allows me a little bit more flexibility of time. So both of those things were really important to me. And knowing what my annual expenses were and what I needed to live off of was really helpful in allowing me to take that step. So I'm in that process now. I've only actually applied for one job because I don't want to work for the next 6 months. I want to take some time and be intentional about this. And so I might get that job, but I hope not too soon, which I've never said those words in my career, right? I've always gone from one job to another. When I leave one, I have one set up. So this is a really big change for me, but I really want to take some time this summer to hang out with the kids and travel and think about what the next steps are.
What people don't realize is they can retire, quote unquote, or partially retire, semi-retire earlier. If they earn $40,000 a year, they have another $1 million portfolio, and you don't think of it as $1 million in retirement. And earning $40,000 can be hard for some people, but honestly, that's doable and allows you to take some of your time back, right?
Absolutely.
I am so glad to see that you are there. Now, you also have considered, and I hope you will pursue it, is financial education.
Yeah. So I just got back from a conference, big national nurse practitioner conference, 5,000 participants. There was not a single talk on anything about finances. There were a few kind of wellness, how to avoid burnout, but nothing about how you could save or set up your career so that you can be in a position to work less. And physicians and nurses and everyone in the healthcare field has been through a hard couple of years. And I can tell you there's some burnout out there and some folks that could really, really benefit from feeling like they have some options around that and still stay in clinical care, which is where we need our healers. So I can propose every year as many talks as I want. So the proposals for next year's talk, which will be in June, just went out. And I put forth 3 financial education talks for nurse practitioners.
You are making a difference, Lisa.
I hope they'll take me up on it, but I'm also would be happy to talk to local nurses. I just felt like this is something I could talk to, even as a layperson, and just get people sort of using your book, Jackie, as a textbook. Just like, here's everything you need to know, but here's how I did it. And is there anything in my story that might motivate you to take some steps in that direction?
Are you going to be transparent with your numbers so that you can empower them? Or is that something you're not going to share?
I feel like that's so powerful, being able to see exactly how $6,000 each year in my Roth IRA eventually led to this. This is something that people can, I think, identify with and see, oh, this is how compounding works. This is how staying the course works. This is what happens when you make mistakes during COVID. And I think I would definitely share my numbers. Happy to put them out there and just let people know sort of that that's how I got there.
What topics do you feel are pivotal? Those 3 topics, I'm kind of interested in what you think that they need to know now and how to get them up and going.
So the 3 ones that I proposed was a beginner, just one of Finances 101 for nurse practitioners was what I'd entitled it. The second one was financial health, A to Z. And that one's going to be a little bit more advanced. So that's when we're going to start talking about the 4% rule and how to save so that you have X amount of your finances that you're wanting to live off by a certain age, the timeline that you can get to this in 10 or 15 years if you just basically follow that simple path to wealth that J.L. Collins talks about. So those are a little bit more of the advanced topics. But even in the beginners, talking about debt that you accumulate during your nursing career, talking about how to raise kids and help with financial independence there, just sort of the basic topics. The third one, they actually do a 3-hour seminar option. And that one I really wanted to take people through and even have them start to think about their goals and put together a plan. So I would ask them to come with some numbers in mind and let's put some things down on paper so you walk away with something, an investment policy, or at least some ideas of where you'd like to get started. So those were the 3 I put forth.
Well, I hope you consider using your first ever podcast episode as a marketing tool to get your talks across, because we've covered a lot of ground. There's a lot of inspiration here. And I am just so proud of you for doing what you're doing. And I wish you really all the best for this next chapter.
And let us know if we can help you with any of that. And I know your goal is not to be any kind of marketing machine or anything like that, but the more people need to hear your story, your instruction, your financial education is going to be so impactful. Being open and sharing your numbers. I'm someone that does that, but we are anomalies. Most people don't share their numbers. So it is going to make a difference to so many people. And that is honestly, Bill, our motivation for doing this podcast is to get out there more of this knowledge and education in a very easy, relatable way by being open and vulnerable. And so we love everything that you have shared with us today. We loved you at the case study. We love that you took so much of this and turned it into a way that you wanted your life to look like. So congratulations on that. Bill, any final word?
Well, I have a physician friend of mine that's always trying to turn his nursing colleagues onto something like our show. This is the perfect show that he's going to have to share with all of them, because you don't have to be high income. If anything, high income can be a liability like it was for me. We had the wealthy custodian on. We have you on, Jackie. You can have a 5-figure income, even a low 5-figure income. If you get it right, early on, but as soon as you get it right, it's a 10 to 15 year journey, as you've proven. So this has been so much fun, as is every show. We just want to thank you for being here, Lisa, and we want to wish you well. We'll see you guys all next week on Catching Up to Fi.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I really enjoyed it.
So, Bill, as you know, we cannot do this show without our amazing staff and the people that help us put this on. Our social media maven is Diana Falk, and our editor is Fritz Brazard. We love them, and they keep us going.
Yeah, Jackie, I mean, this show wouldn't have the quality it has without our folks, our peeps. And we'd also like to give you a few calls to action for the show. We love our community, and we hope you love us back. If you would like to support the show and our mission to help late starters, you can do that at Buy Me a Coffee, which is a platform that allows you to make a donation. The link is in the show notes and on the website.
Check out the show notes for resources mentioned in today's show. Also, head on over to our website at catchinguptofi.com and check out our vetted resources, partners, and affiliates for discounts and their services, because we love sharing great deals.
Please share the show with others and head on over to our Facebook community to help us grow. If you prefer video, head on over to YouTube and watch the show there. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Catching Up to Fi. We would appreciate it if you could also leave us a 5-star review to help our message reach others.
And while we are financial educators that love to teach, remember that our content is for general education and information purposes only. We are not providing financial, legal, or tax advice. Always do your own research or consult a professional before making important decisions.
So, Jackie, we'll see our audience next time on Catching Up to Fi. Cheers.